I never thought I'd find something like this. Not after all these years, not after his death. It felt like the ground beneath me was pulled away, leaving me falling into a world I didn't recognize. This letter I found, written by my late husband to his first love, changed everything. It made me wonder if I ever really knew him at all. Hello, I'm Evelyn. I'm 68 years old, and I've been married to Richard for 45 years. He was my best friend, my husband, the father of my children. He passed away 2 years ago, leaving me alone with my memories and a life that once felt perfect. But recently I found something that made me question everything I thought I knew about our love. It all started one cold afternoon when I was going through some of Richard's old belongings. It wasn't something I had done often since his passing, but I had some time to myself, and I felt like cleaning out some old drawers in the study. There, tucked away in an old envelope, was a letter, my husband's handwriting on the front. I opened it with trembling hands, not knowing what to expect. As I read the letter, my heart sank. It was addressed to a woman named Linda, his first love. The words on the paper weren't the ones I had expected. They were full of longing, passion, and emotions that seemed so unfamiliar to me. This letter had never been sent, but it was clear that my husband, the man I had shared so many years with, had loved another woman deeply. And I was left wondering, did I ever really know him? The first thing that hit me was the shock. I wasn't prepared for what I was about to read. Richard had always been quiet about his past, especially about Linda. He never talked much about her, and when I asked, he would change the subject quickly. But this letter? It was a confession of love, one that he had never shared with me. The words on the page were full of affection. "I have never stopped loving you," it began. "I know I made a mistake letting you go, and every day without you has been like living in a world without color." As I read, it felt like the walls around me were closing in. I couldn't believe it. My husband, who I thought I knew so well, had kept this secret locked away. Why had he never told me? Why hadn't he said these things to me? I sat there in silence for what felt like hours, staring at the paper in my hands. It wasn't just a letter. It was a window into a part of Richard's soul that I'd never seen. His feelings for Linda seemed so deep, so genuine, and I couldn't understand why he had never mentioned her to me. As the initial shock wore off, a feeling of betrayal began to take root in my heart. It wasn't the letter itself, but the realization that Richard had kept this secret from me for so long. How could he have hidden something so important? Had I ever truly known him? For years, Richard and I built a life together. We had our ups and downs, of course, but I always believed that our love was strong and true. But this letter made me question everything. If he could love someone else so deeply, someone he had never married, someone he had let go, did that mean our love was never as real as I thought? I tried to push the thoughts away, to convince myself that I was just being foolish. After all, Richard had been a good husband. He had been there for me when I needed him, supported me through difficult times, and loved our children. But every time I closed my eyes, the words from that letter replayed in my mind. "I have never stopped loving you." Could he have loved me as much as he had loved her? Or had I always been second place in his heart? With these thoughts swirling in my mind, I began to look back at our years together. I thought about all the happy memories we had shared. Our wedding day, the birth of our children, the quiet nights spent together in front of the TV. Was all of it a lie? Or was I just overthinking things? I couldn't stop myself from thinking about Richard's past with Linda. He had mentioned her a few times during our marriage, but never in detail. He had said they were young and naive, that they had loved each other, but life had pulled them in different directions. But that letter made it clear that their love had been something more. I remembered a time, about 10 years ago, when Richard seemed distant for a while. He was working late, coming home tired, and we didn't spend as much time together. At the time, I just assumed it was the stress of work, the responsibilities of raising children. But now, I couldn't help but wonder if it was because he was thinking of her. I wasn't sure if I could ever truly forgive him for not telling me about Linda, for not being open about how he had felt. But I also wondered if I could ever really move on from this discovery. Could I continue to love a man who had loved someone else so much? As I sat alone in the study, holding the letter in my hands, I realized something. This letter wasn't just about Richard's love for Linda. It was about his legacy, and mine. We had spent so many years together, raising children, building a life, making memories. And while this letter made me question the past, it also made me wonder about the future. Could I forgive him for this? Could I accept that his love for Linda had been real, but that he had chosen me in the end? Maybe he had made mistakes, but hadn't I too? Didn't we all carry scars from our past, things we didn't always talk about? I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of the past. It was about understanding that we are all flawed. We all have parts of ourselves that we keep hidden, things that we may never fully share with others. Richard's love for Linda wasn't something I could change, but I could choose how I responded. I could choose whether or not to let it tear me apart, or to accept that it was a part of his story, and mine. As I thought about forgiveness, I realized that closure was the key to healing. I didn't need to hold on to the anger and pain I felt. I needed to find a way to understand Richard's actions, to accept that he had made choices that I might never fully understand. But finding closure wasn't easy. How could I move on from this discovery? How could I live with the knowledge that my husband had loved someone else so deeply, even after we had spent so many years together? I decided to take my time. I didn't want to make any rash decisions or say things in anger. I needed to reflect, to understand my own feelings before I could make peace with the past. Richard was gone, but his memory still lived on in me. And I realized that in the end, it wasn't about what I could change. It was about how I chose to live with what had happened. After reading that letter, my world felt like it had been turned upside down. But as the days passed, I began to find a sense of peace. I could never fully erase the hurt or the questions that lingered in my heart, but I could choose to move forward with grace. I would always love Richard, and I would always cherish the memories we made together. But I could also honor my own journey and my own story. I couldn't change the past, but I could shape the future. And that's what I decided to do. I would forgive, I would remember, and I would live.